Illustrator gives you a variety of different types of brushes that you can make. I tend to use the scatter brush and art brush more than any of the others, especially the art brush, and they can be surprisingly easy to make. I'm going to start off by making a thick and thin, sort of like this one right here. I'm going to use the ellipse tool, and I'm going to make a 4-point circle. It's going to be filled with black and have no stroke. I'm going to use this direct selection tool, that's A, to select that, and I'm taking the rightmost point. I'm going to right click, go transform and move, then I'm going to move that 100 points horizontally and 0 points vertically. This is going to give us kind of a needle shape. In order to make that into a brush, all I have to do is drag it into my brushes palette. Then it's going to ask me what kind I want it to be, and it's going to be an art brush. If I did a scatter brush, that would give me a series of these needle shapes following the path, but I want the path itself to be this shape. So I click on OK, and now I'm going to give it a descriptive name, so I'm just going to call it 4-point thick to thin, because I'm going to have it start at the thick point, go to the thin end. This is where you can choose the direction. And I'm going to make sure that the colorization method is tints. That's going to let me change the color, whatever the stroke is. So if I click on OK, now I have this as a brush, and I'll shrink down here a little bit. If I draw a line and go across like that, and if I do the 4-point thick to thin, you can see how it looks just like that, but if I go into my path mode, this is just a path. This is the shape that created that brush. So if I made this line longer and still had that, it's still keeping that same shape, 4 points at the thickest point, and it's stretching it out. I can even make it a circular shape, or I can go in, make wavy shapes, and apply that. Still has 4 points at the thick end, going to a point there. The only time you really need to be concerned about it is if you are doing a closed shape, like a circle or a rectangle or anything that's just closed on it. If I drag from upper left to lower right to create that shape and apply it, the origin of it is going to be at the 3 o'clock going clockwise. If I go from the lower right to the upper left and apply that brush, it starts at 9 o'clock and it's going clockwise. Even if I just click on it, if I just click and I'm not dragging in any direction, I'm just going to give it a definite shape. Default is at the 3 o'clock position. So if you wanted to have the thick and thin on a closed shape, you have to trick it into no longer being a closed shape by going into the scissors tool, C, and just clicking on where you want that to start. And it's still going to go clockwise. Now, because I made this so that I could do the tints, I can make this any color I want, and the stroke is going to be whatever I've applied, no matter what this one was there. Now, I could take this same one, if I go into the brushes, I could take this and duplicate it and say I wanted it to go from thin to thick. I could just flip it across, so it's going horizontally like that. And I can change the name of it, so I'll just call it thin to thick. And then click on OK. So now if I've got this one right now has the thick to thin, now it's thin to thick. You can change the direction of the pointiness just by changing the shape of the tool. Now if I go back into the path view, and let's zoom in a little bit closer here. In the same way I did the other point, I could take that and I can go transform, move, and make that a -100. So now I have a thick and thin that's going like that. So where this one has the wide point centered in it, I'm going to drag that in, and I can call that a new art brush. I'll call this one 4-point centered. So I've got a 4-point center going in here, and it doesn't matter what direction this is going because it's symmetrical. So I'm going to click on OK. Now if I apply this to any of these shapes, if I go 4-point center, see how it goes thin, thick, and thin, but also notice that even though the stroke has color blue applied to it, it's still black here, and that's because I didn't change that. So I don't have to delete this and start all over again. All I have to do is double click, go in here and change that to tints. Then I click on OK. I'm going to apply it to the strokes, and now I can make this whatever color I like. So this is a great use of your downtime if you don't have anything that's on the agenda right now, or you're at the beginning stages of a project where things are still kind of slow. It's not a bad idea to give yourself a bunch of brushes that you can create, but then you can also save that as a brush library. Always a good idea to have a number of brushes at your disposal.